The reality we live in can be a very strange place. Most of the time, fact being stranger than fiction. How will we ever start to understand this reality we live in unless we question everything? Join me and a guest as we unravel the mysteries of this reality, one topic at a time. This is Inquiries of Our Reality with Shayn Jones.
What is up, Inquirers, and welcome to the expanse of deep, open-minded conversation. I'm the one they call Shane, and today for you guys, I have a fascinating conversation touching base on a lot of different facets of strange phenomenon, from UFOs to cryptids to even some personal philosophy. This one's a really fun, open conversation diving into a lot of things, so I definitely think that you guys are going to enjoy it. But before we get into this episode, of course, today we have a couple of quick news and updates. First and foremost, for anybody that might be interested in catching the next Bizarre Inquiries Live, that'll be happening on July 3rd at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if anybody has any clips, questions, articles, or anything that they would like to submit for that, make sure you guys get those to me beforehand. But if you don't, we, of course, will pass it on to the next episode. And if anybody might be interested in joining the OMM Discord community, I do still have the link for that available down in the show notes so you guys can find it quick and easy. Pop on in over there, get on the ground floor of a brand new community just starting back up, and hopefully have some weird conversations along the way with some like-minded individuals. And if anybody might still be interested in receiving a free t-shirt with the free t-shirt giveaway, that again is still running. All you have to do to enter is fill out a 10-question survey, which is all your guys' personal opinions for things that can help the show grow and improve. Your opinions go a long way to help the show continuously grow. So hopefully you guys don't mind taking a few minutes to give me your guys' opinions. And worst comes to worst, you guys will end up winning a free t-shirt out of it. And again, that is any t-shirt of your choice off of the Open Minds Media merch store. And that will be running until we hit 50 submissions. Currently, we are at about 10, so we have a long way to go. So you guys have more than enough time to be able to submit your surveys, but hopefully get them to me sooner rather than later, of course. And if you guys enjoyed this show, don't forget to go and check out my other show, Bizarre Encounters with Shayn Orin. We've been doing a lot of fascinating deep dives over there, so if you guys enjoy the content of this show, I definitely think that you guys will enjoy that show. A lot of the same stuff, but of course in a different format, meaning that we deep dive into a lot of stuff instead of doing guests, but I definitely think you guys will enjoy it all the same. And just one last thing before we get into the show. If anyone is interested in being a guest on the show, sharing their experiences or encounters, or contacting me for any reason whatsoever, you guys can do so through email, which is inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com, or you guys can call or text the Open Minds Media hotline. That number is 313-364-1551. And if you guys didn't happen to catch that, don't fear, it is available down in the show description so you guys can find it quick and easy. And every single thing that I mention and will mention throughout the show is all available on the link tree, which is also available down in that show description. And with that, let's get into the show. Please welcome to the show, author, researcher, and podcaster, Charlie Mewshaw. How's it going today, man?
Thanks for having me on, Shane. It's cool to be here. I'm glad the algorithm put us together.
This was, I think I tried at one point a little bit earlier, and then I ended up doubling back because I saw that there was like a message that I sent, and then we kind of just like stopped connecting at some point. But like usual, I'm glad that we ended up reconnecting and we're able to make this show happen, because diving through your page and seeing all the fascinating stuff you do, man, I can see we got a lot of interesting stuff to dive into and talk about.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I think we have a lot in common as far as interests go. So good. Yeah. I guess for people that are like, that's cool, who's this guy? My name's Charlie. I am an author and researcher of pretty much all things weird. cryptozoology, UFOs, paranormal. I host a show.
All the good stuff.
Yeah, all the fun stuff, at least. I host a show on Discovery called Lost Monster Files that has a distinctly cryptozoological focus. I've got a long-running podcast and book series called Arcane Carolinas, which focuses specifically on sort of the Southeast U.S., on all those topics and how those topics intersect with verifiable history and modern science, and you can sort of actually start to connect dots and be like, oh, some of this stuff is like really feasible, and like I want to believe, right? And I want to find that kernel of truth that sits inside of folklore, and it's out there.
Well, I guess that's a perfect spot to start, because I always love diving into local folklore stories and the people that connect into them and diving into them with history and try to find the real ties to them to know where the root of it all comes from. So I guess that's a good spot to start, man. What exactly inspired you to dive into that stuff in the Carolinas? Was there specific stories, stuff you heard as a kid, or where did it all kind of start for you?
Probably as a kid, like being super into spooky pop culture definitely had an influence. And the stories that kids tell each other about the monsters in the woods at the end of their street or whatever, you know, like that stuff is obviously inspiring. But I think that it really clicked in. I feel like I should give you my insurance card because I feel like this is therapy because we're talking about. Do you take
That's what podcasts are for, man.
Yeah, do you take Blue Cross? Can we do that? In middle school,
I run pro bono.
Oh, excellent. Even better. So in middle school, I had a teacher that had this bookshelf. And if you got your assignments done on time or finished a test early or whatever, you could go get a book off the bookshelf. And he had this like giant tome, this like leather bound tome with like gilded print on the spine, like looked like this, like what you would think of like ancient book of wisdom. And it was just filled with like weird stuff from history around the world. Like Spring-Heeled Jack was in there, and like various Sasquatch stories and like ghost stories. It was just a big book of weird stuff. I don't know the title of it. I have no way of getting in touch with this guy anymore, but like that was the book that was like the lightning bolt of like, oh, you can approach these topics academically. And this was in like middle school. And from there, I was off to the races. In 9th grade biology, I requested to write a report on spontaneous human combustion. Like I was just off, and I was like, anything I could get my hands on that could possibly explain the topics that I thought were really fun and cool and weird. I was in on it. But then, you know, life happens and priorities shift, and like it was always an interest. But as far as generating media for people to consume, that came much, much later. I was driving down the road, and this was in 2019 or 2020. It was in 2020. And I saw a sign by the side of the road that was very strange. And I pulled over and I called a buddy of mine that I was doing an unrelated podcast with, who also likes this stuff. I was like, why aren't we doing a podcast about the weird stuff like in our area? And he was like, what? I was like, dude, let's do a podcast about ghosts and monsters and everything that goes bump in the night and how it ties to real history and science. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. And then Arcane Carolinas started, and then that turned into a zine, and then the zine turned into a series of books, and then Discovery Channel was like, hey, you know, we have access to Ivan Sanderson's archive. Do you want to check it out? And I was like, yeah, I sure do.
Definitely.
And that's really how it went, man. So it's been a lifelong journey with, I would say, the last 5 years sharing it publicly. Right. Before that, it was all just for me. You
got to find a muse to be able to get it out, you know, because that was always my thing, too, is you start collecting all this weird stuff and then you're like, all right, I have all this in my head, but what do I do with it? You got to like start up a conversation about it or write a book about it, or you end up like getting so filled to the brim with it that you like have to put it out there, and you almost feel like you need to. Otherwise, some of the folklore might end up dying, you know, if the right people aren't talking about it.
What, if you don't mind my asking, I'll turn this around on you. What, so I'm looking at your room there, and I'm seeing all the best stuff. I got, you know, cryptids and aliens and ghosts. What was sort of the catalyst for you to start your show?
It was a combination of things. For me, it was like personal experiences. Growing up with my grandma that was 100% Cherokee, so she used to tell me all these different like Native American folklore stories and stuff.
Yeah.
And then I had a bigger experience that ended up happening to me that I ended up calling into Monsters Among Us not too long ago about seeing this weird creature in this abandoned insane asylum. And ever since then, it kind of kicked in for me that I kind of dived into a little bit of everything, like conspiracies, UFOs. I mean, they all end up getting tied together as you kind of start diving into it. Also, on top of that, being like a history buff in high school, where I got pushed into AP history without actually trying to, because I was correcting the teacher, and they were getting mad at me because I kept correcting the teacher on Greek gods. That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day they were like, all right, can you go down to the office? And then all of a sudden I was in AP history, but it was just like in a mess of a bunch of different things and wanting to research and then being like, what do I do with this? On top of, for me, at least coming into podcasting, I had 4 years of radio in high school because we had a radio station at our high school. So just a combination of things all eventually just kind of came together at one point.
we are kindred spirit. Greetings, fellow AP history and AV nerd. This is a good match. Awesome, man. I love that. That's fantastic because you're absolutely right. Like you fill your head with all this knowledge and studying of history, and it just starts to spill out of you. It's actually funny. This came up recently with my kid. I'm located in North Carolina, and we have a thing at the end of the year called the EOGs, end of grade tests in elementary school. I have to like test out their grade. And he was kind of nervous. He was like, "Oh man, I got the EOGs and blah 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 blah, and like it's gonna be hard." I was like, "Come here." And I pulled an old report card out, and I was like, "You see that? What's that? What's that one at the top?" He was like, "It's an A." I was like, "Yeah, it's history, right?" And he was like, "Yeah." Right. What's the next grade? It was not good. I'm not going to say what it is. Put myself out there, but it was very bad. He goes, "Ooh, Dad, you can't do geometry at all." And I'm like, "No, I can't." So it was like, but that's okay because it all kind of turned out, didn't it? And he was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Just pursue the things that make you passionate, dude. Like, go in there, take your test, do the best you can, and like, you're gonna be all right." Like, I get to talk about monsters and ghosts and history and how they all like cross over. Like, I get to do that.
Yeah, it'll all work itself out in the end, you know?
Right.
It's just like you kind of mentioned, like everybody kind of has their specialty. It's not like everybody has to be good at everything, but
Right.
the thing that you end up being really good at without trying whatsoever, that ends up being your thing. So, you know, you need to gravitate towards that because I'll admit too, man, like I wasn't that great when it came to math for whatever reason in high school, but when it came to writing, going over like stories and story comprehension, even biology, which kind of gets into a lot of like the Sasquatch stuff and, you know, a lot of like the cryptid research, and then history, of course. It was like those things I no problem didn't even have to try, and I was already like getting A's in those. But everything else, it was kind of like depending on the teacher, you know. Sometimes you get those hard asses, other times you get the ones that are like, all right, you're trying, we'll try to work with you a little bit.
Well, so something you just touched on that, like, I think can feed these sort of interests and hobbies, right? So, same with me. I really like biology. I was really good in like the sort of like hard sciences. Math always sucked. But I got a degree in natural resource science. Because I was like, this is interesting and adjacent to things that I'm interested in. Like, I can do that. So I got a degree in natural resource science. And from there, worked a little while and then realized like, oh, I can't really do much with this. What else do I like? Technology and, you know, gadgets. So I went back to school and I got a master's degree in a technology related field. And now I get to use both. So.
See, that's like half the battle when it comes to the media stuff is the tech portion of it. Because like when I was in radio and TV, and I also had a TV class back then, it was like I was using Final Cut. I 100% learned how to do that, knew all the shortcuts, no problem whatsoever. And I was like proficient on it. But now my problem is that I don't have access to be able to buy that program. And I'm trying to figure out other programs, but I'm getting like frustrated with myself because I'm not as fluent with it as I used to be with that. But I'm great with the audio stuff. So I'm like having trouble connecting the technology and with like the podcasting stuff. But, you know, again, it's like multiple means of attack that you may not realize how things might eventually come together. But again, you just follow your interests, and all of a sudden, all of your interests at one point will finally just end up coming together, and you'll just be like a light switch flicked on. You're like, all right, now I see how all of these things combine together.
And specifically, in the media production stuff, it's helpful, but also like in the field doing either paranormal investigations. I use that term very loosely because it means different things to different people. Or like,
I'm always one of those people that you have to be a skeptic, but you also have to be open-minded at the same time. Like, before I come to any conclusion, I have to have some type of scientific basis or like imperialistic like basis to get to that point. So I may talk about some crazy stuff on the show, but it's like I've had a step-by-step of all of these particular things that make sense to get to that point, and it's hard for me just to jump into the woo-woo without connecting it into some other things, which is why astrophysics is such a great thing, is because it helps connect a lot of this weird stuff that was kind of just off in the woo-woo forever.
Yeah, no, totally. And it's wild when we realize, like, oh, we don't understand how this works. But the technology stuff, like, you can build gadgets. Like, you know, you can understand how gadgets work and take them into the field with you and collect data points to either validate your experience or, you know, say like, oh, well, that was just an anomaly. So yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell. I'm a mix of healthy skepticism, optimism, technology, and natural resource science. That's who I am and how I got into this stuff. And I'm down for running around the woods looking for stuff. But if we can have tools to help us along the way, even better.
Yeah, because then at least you got something to work with, and you're not just telling stories. But I mean, telling the stories, I mean, a first person encounter with something is definitely like something that's ground for like, all right, I full on know that this thing exists. But for other people, it's hard to bring back and say like, oh, I had this face on encounter with a Sasquatch, and take that home, and you want other people to believe you. You need something to be able to catch it. And it seems like lately with the Sasquatch stuff, thermo seems to be like our best method. But with a lot of the technology with this stuff, even with like, especially the paranormal, I feel like we're at the cusp of when we're starting to kind of understand the theories and dynamics and how things work. But I don't think the technology is where it needs to be able to document this stuff properly. So we're kind of at the point where we're like poking around the dark, but we're actually kind of getting somewhere because we're creating the theories. But I think it's going to be like the next generation is going to start developing the equipment that really has a basis for, you know, putting some type of documentation on this type of stuff.
I would wholeheartedly agree with that. I feel like we have a lot of great ideas and theories and gadgets that we
even getting drones in the wood for Sasquatch. I mean, that's already impossible to do, especially with a thermo. Mm-hmm. Even though we have it, it's just we don't have the means to be able to do it.
Exactly.
Hold on tight, guys. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. But in the meantime, don't forget to follow Inquiries of Our Reality on Instagram and Facebook for show updates and the weekly live schedules. And don't forget to check out Open Minds Media on YouTube and TikTok, and tap that bell icon while you're there to get notified anytime we happen to go live. And if you'd like to join the discussion with like-minded individuals, become a member of the OMM Discord community today. All of those links are available off the link tree in the show description. And now back to the show.
But yeah, so yeah, let me turn this around and ask you a question. UFOs, / aliens, ghosts, cryptids. Where are you at? What's your flavor that you prefer the most?
Out of the three of those?
Yeah.
Personally, I mean, the one I dive into the most is probably cryptids, just because I feel like it's one of those things that you can kind of really like get in there, and it's something that's really real world that you can kind of grab and touch and experience. Yeah. I mean, the paranormal stuff, of course, is definitely fascinating, but a lot of it's just like, you know, I had this feeling, I had this thing touch me. Like, it's really, really hard to just have a group of guys and just see something that's rustling the trees in front of you. And then the UFO stuff, as fascinating as that is, and as hands-on as the encounters are for a lot of people, it's like, unless you're an abductee, it's kind of hard to, you're just kind of creating theories depending on other people's experiences and encounters. So the thing I've always gravitated for is the cryptid stuff, because I feel like you can really get out there and really do it. And even on the other side of the cryptid stuff too, I feel like that's the one that has the most grounds for possible explanations. And, you know, they may not always be the most miraculous things. Like, you know, a lot of these things might actually be animals that we just didn't realize were in the area. But, you know, the adventure's half the battle, and going out in the woods is always a good time. So, I mean, 2 birds, 1 stone right there, as far as I'm concerned. And on top of that, you also get the history mixed in.
Right. I think so. For me, cryptids are awesome because there's generally, again, this isn't every cryptid, but the more feasible or plausible cryptids to me are the ones that have decades, if not centuries, of folklore behind them of like, oh, this creature lives in this region. And yeah, it may be a misidentified something or other. It may, but there may be a mundane explanation. Or it could be a unique, like, pocket population of something special that hasn't been discovered. And I think that it's been demonstrated sometimes on a very micro level, right? Like sometimes we find like a bug and we're like, oh, we didn't know this bug was here. And that's cool. But other times it is something big, right? Like the giant squid was a cryptid until, however many decades ago was it? 50 years ago? I might be.
I think it was only like the 90s or early 2000s that those were actually like discovered fully. Like we kind of had an idea they were there, but I didn't think they were documented yet.
Right, and they had been these like creatures of lore for generations in nautical tales. So I think cryptozoology is that perfect mix of like validating folklore with real scientific discovery. That's super exciting.
And getting a firsthand perspective too about how people experience these creatures too, because now there's something that's mundane, but back then it was this ravenous beast that they didn't know how to quite handle. I mean, even going into some of the stuff with the Amazon with like the black rhinos and thinking that they were like the miniature dinosaurs and everything. It's just a matter of context too. Like it's fascinating to see a different perspective on animals for people that may not have had the same context as you diving into them, just to see things through another person's eyes too.
Yeah. And it's also fun when you get into like sort of the more out there cryptids, opening the door. If you're open to having these conversations about the woo, about like, I love the theories that like Sasquatch is just aliens' pets, and they're basically just like this saucer comes down and drops them out, so like let them out to go to the bathroom. I'm like, all right, come on, buddy, get back in. Fly away. And then maybe some cryptid sightings are extraterrestrial or ultra-terrestrial. That's a friend. What did my friend say? My friend Michael calls it walksies. He's like, oh yeah, the aliens are just dropping off their squatch for some walksies, and they'll come back and pick them up. I just think that's hilarious. Like, and in the absence of like actually finding one, it's a fun joke, right? So yeah, I think cryptids have a lot of room for fun. They have a lot of room for like actual discovery. I know that some people really do truly believe that Sasquatch is like an ultra terrestrial like being. I don't believe that personally, but I haven't found one, so I can't tell people that it's not.
See, it's one of those things that I think it can be a mixture of different things all at once. That, there could be definitely the huge like flesh and blood dynamic to Sasquatch, for example, but there could also be something else, because it seems like they're in these specifically like weird areas. And, I definitely get into like quantum theories and like different dimensions and all this type of stuff. And, my usual thing that I say with Sasquatch is like, a lot of people like to theorize that these things are like consciously being able to like transport between dimensions and do all this type of stuff. But I often kind of wonder if it's more of something like, they're not necessarily like more intelligent than us. They're kind of on the same level as us, just intelligent in a different way, because they've learned how to adapt in the woods versus, adapt in like a city, for example. But, you hear about a bunch of stories of people, going through these like time slips, or people going through these like weird parallel like realities. And I think that it's definitely possible that these things could be some type of bleed over, since they kind of seem to be in specific areas of this. But again, it's kind of like one of those things that it seems kind of woo woo, but if you connect it in with some, astrophysics, which is all, essentially theories right now, but, it's still, I feel like there's still some type of like scientific base for there to be a possibility of this otherworldly reality to them, but not necessarily in as conscious of way as people like to kind of guess with Sasquatch. But even on the flip side, man, I've never met a Sasquatch. I've never had a conversation with a Sasquatch. So, for all I know, these things could be some type of interdimensional shamans that have the ability to go boo and transfer between dimensions. Like, I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. It's fun. You can have fun with them. Like, I feel like you can definitely have fun with cryptids. You can be super serious about them too. It's a good time. It's a good flavor of weird. I will say that UFOs / aliens, if we're lumping them together, as usually happens, are another one that's fun for me. I think that there's probably, I'm gonna get weird. I think there's probably something to the idea about USOs, or like underwater unidentified objects, and maybe they're here. Maybe they're just hanging out under the water.
See, that's something I've kind of theorized about. Is that first, I mean, with the alien UFO thing, I definitely think that it's two different sides of the phenomenon, that there is something weird with something that could be from another dimension or another world. But on the flip side, too, I definitely think that there is some government intervention. I've connected some weird things with like MK Ultra, mind control, and like, the Nazi experiments and all the different weird things they were doing that kind of fell into a place where it definitely seems like the possibility they could have just kind of continued on those experiments under the facade of pretending like it's a UFO abduction. Yeah. But again, I'm not going to say that there's not seemingly this other weird component to it. And I mean, when it comes to stuff being in the news, it's kind of hard to necessarily know which direction to go with stuff. Could it be complete misdirection? Could it be, that this is literally factual, what's going on? But, I definitely think that if they are here, whether they're coming from somewhere else, whatever, there is a facet to them having some type of grounds here. So that being said, like the whole underwater base concept, like completely makes sense to me, because that would be the place where we wouldn't necessarily be able to go. Right. And getting into some weird theories with their ships and how they possibly function. I mean, I've often wondered if it's a matter of these things might not necessarily be able to travel in space necessarily like we think that they do, but rather that they might use like magnetic fields from Earth itself, and they might actually work almost like a magnet, or that's how the zero gravity ability is able to work, is that it just uses the magnetic fields of the Earth to basically make the opposite so that it can sit on top of it. But even with that too, it seems like there's this component that people talk about where they seem like they have this like this hum to them, this like vibrate, and there's a lot of stories of people get coming up to them and touching them, and they get burned from them, but they seem like they're vibrating at this like ultrasonic frequency. So even with that, it seems like maybe that's the component where these things are able to travel through space, travel through air, travel through water, is because there's nothing that's actually touching the surface of these things. So it doesn't matter what terrain they're going through, they're just able to gravitate through this thing. And I've even wondered if with that vibration aspect of things and advanced technology, you get into the tiny microscopic level of things, and everything is vibrating, and it's all just a bunch of little tiny particles. If this thing is able to vibrate at a different pitch than this, reality or whatever you want to call it, I mean, is it possible that this thing could essentially just pass through things on a microscopic level because it's not actually ever touching anything? Mm-hmm. And even trippier, it's like technically, when you really break down science, like nothing is ever actually touching anything.
Well, so there's a what is his name? It's the guy, he had a show on HBO, the Batman reels. Pete Holmes, I think was it Holmes? Hang on a second.
I can look it up.
Yeah, let me get his name right. Let me make sure that I'm giving, Pete Holmes. So there's a comedian, if you Google picture most of it. Okay, can you see me? Sorry, I clicked over.
Yeah, I can still see you.
All right, cool. So Pete Holmes is a stand-up comic, and he did a pretty funny bit about molecules. And he was like, you think you're on planet Earth? Or no, you think you're in America? Zoom out! Like, you're on a space rock. And that space rock is made of molecules. And those molecules, like, I'm made of molecules. You're made of molecules. My molecules know that I'm Pete. And he's like, that's fucking weird. Sorry, I can redo that if we don't do language here.
No, you're good. You're allowed to swear on the show. I always tell people no filter on the show. Everybody just be their authentic self. So you're all good.
But he's just like, and that's weird. He was like, in that chair over there, that's made of molecules. And if I put my molecules into those molecules, they don't go through. And when we ask science why, they go, I don't know. It's just that excitement about how weird things are. If you are able to, and you are, because you just demonstrated it by speaking a little more eloquently about what I'm trying to say, it's just exciting to let your mind wander about how weird it is, how weird everything is, how weird existence is. And it opens up possibilities to, it could be a lot of different things when we talk about the phenomena. And that's fun.
See, people, when they have young kids, they're always like, oh, stop asking all these weird questions. But, I'm sure you had the same thing when you were a kid. You just be staring at something and be like, how does that work? Why does that function like that? Yep. And I still even get that. I mean, I saw a giant planter inside of an office building, and I'm like, do you think that thing self-waters? Do you think they physically bring a hose in there every day to water it? But it's all those weird little precise questions on how things work that get you to a point where you start getting into the more into the strange stuff aspect of things, but trying to connect it in with like real world connections with things to not make it sound like it's so ridiculous. And that's where I think we end up forming a basis of research for this stuff is, let your kids ask the weird questions, because one day they might be one of the people that's able to bring some type of comprehension to the weird. Hold on tight, guys. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And now back to the show.
So again, I'll talk about my kid, one of my kids. Same one from earlier. Last year, I was coming back from a trip, and he was like, we're in the car, we're driving. He was like, how long are you home for? I was like, I'm home for a week. And he was like, cool. He was like, where are you going next? And I told him I was going next. And he was like, are you looking for Bigfoot? And I went, yeah, I'm looking for Bigfoot. And he was like, kid at school told me Bigfoot's not real, Dad. Why are you looking for Bigfoot? And I just like pulled the car over and was like, has that kid ever seen Bigfoot? I said, no. I said, have you ever seen Bigfoot? No. I said, I've never seen Bigfoot either, but I'm trying. And there are people that say that they've seen him. And he was like, yeah. I was like, does your friend know those people? And he was like, no. I was like, so how about your friend doesn't actually know if Bigfoot's not real or not, and don't let him crush your imagination? So I think that, and he was just like, oh, so Bigfoot's real. I said, I don't know. I want him to be. But it's that willingness to entertain an idea. You're right. That like it is healthy and good. And the next generation might be the people that make that device that helps us find something. So, yeah.
Ain't that the truth, man? I do the same thing with my daughter where, I kind of entertain the ideas. I don't say like, it's 100% out there. I'm just saying like, entertain the possibility. Right. So she'll have friends too that'll say things like, oh, Sasquatch isn't real. And she's listens to me enough at this point that it's funny. She'll start throwing things at him like, oh, have you ever heard about this? Have you ever heard about this? Have you ever heard about the footprints? Have you ever seen the footprints? And then I brought her out with me squatching once, and we had an experience where we ended up, not anything too crazy, but just heard some like whooping off in the distance. And we got that thick, like musty smell. And we're with a group of people and stuff. But even her, she's been out there to even say like, you don't believe in Sasquatch, but I've been out there to at least try to experience it. So you got some kind of grounds to stand on, you got to let them have some kind of imagination. But on the flip side, man, when you got kids like that and they're a little bit on the younger side, like she's 9, it's going to be harder one day to try to break the main ones like Santa Claus and stuff to her. Cause it's like, how do you shatter that paradigm without shattering the other paradigm of the other possibilities in the world? Like that's a hard split right there when you're like a Sasquatch parent, and then one day you got to be like, yeah, so Santa Claus, we got to have a talk about this guy.
So I'll share with you how we did it, how I handled it. The same kid, he's older. He's also 9 than my younger one. And he hit me with, Dad, is Santa not real? And I was like, well, Santa's the spirit of Christmas. He was like, stop it. Is Santa real? And I was like, there is not a man in a red suit that lives at the North Pole. And he was like, he got real mad. And he was like, you lied to me. I was like, I didn't lie to you, because I am your Santa Claus. And now that you know the secret, you get to be Santa Claus for somebody else. And he was like, what? I was like, that is the spirit of Christmas. And you get to be Santa and carry it on for your brother. And he was like, do I still get presents? I was like, yes, you still get presents. And he was like, okay. And so then it gassed him up, man. And he was like super into it. And he was like super excited about making Christmas special, like for his brother. And then Christmas Eve, I put his younger brother to bed. We're going to put him in bed. He's like, hey, I still believe. And I'm like, there you go, buddy. You're Santa now. I was like, that's the magic. So that's how we handled it. Your mileage may vary, but that's how we handled it.
That's a smart way of handling it. I didn't actually think about it that way. What I was kind of thinking was I was going to give her like the basis of fact with it. Mm-hmm. So I can say like, this exists as folklore, this exists as this. Like, there is still a cultural presence to it. Like, there is still a thing. It's not like it means nothing. It's something that has to do with like culture. So it has ground. But I like that. I like what you said, where you kind of spin it and pass it on to the next generation, because then I feel like that lessens the blow a bit.
It did. I'll let you know how. I'll call you in a couple of years and let you know how it goes with the second one.
When he doesn't have anybody to pass it on to directly, he's gonna have to wait until later on in life. That's gonna be the hard one.
Right. So it worked because I had an out. But yeah, we'll see how it goes with the next.
You gotta hope that you have like a younger cousin or something like that. That's like that one. That's what you can do. You can be the Santa for that one.
I'm glad we talked about this, because you know what? There is a younger cousin, and here we go. That is perfect.
Finding each other out. That's how we do over here.
Come for the Sasquatch. Stay for the parenting advice.
There you go. And I mean, being a Sasquatch parent is very particular. Like, this is one of those questions that I'm sure it's like a thing that every Sasquatch parent deals with. So this is the real conversations that need to be had.
We had those talks. I mean, the older guy has seen me. He's come along to talks and book signings, and he's watched the TV show, and I've had to explain to him, like, he's like, "Oh, what was it?" I'm like, "I don't know. He said, "Well, tell me what it was." I'm like, I really, truly do not know. Like, I really can't tell you. Not because I'm hiding it, because I don't know what the hell it was. And he's just like, "Oh." I'm like, "But that's the fun."
What is it? That's the question, because there's nothing else out here that we know of that makes that sound, which makes it exciting, is that we don't know what exactly that was. Right. Is it a Sasquatch? Is it something else that we don't know about? Either way, it's still a fascinating mystery.
Exactly. So yeah, there should be a I think we're doing it right now. I was going to say there should be a parenting of the bizarre podcast, but I think we just did it. So there you go. We've provided all the answers, and this will live forever on the internet, and people will find it.
Until the next question comes up, and then we have to address that one. But that'll be on round 2 for sure.
Right, exactly.
So, of course, I can't let you get away without sharing some of these Sasquatch experiences, possible Sasquatch experiences, and, of course, some of your favorite folklore you dived into, because I always like to try to make a place on the show for, some stuff that's a little bit more obscure that might fall into non-existence if we don't continue sharing the stories. So, wherever you might want to start with it, man, whatever you're the most passionate about, I'd love to dive into some of your personal stuff.
Yeah. I had some weird paranormal stuff happened that I denied as being paranormal for some time. And recently sort of like was like, all right, that's weird. I can't explain it. I'll give you some behind the scenes stuff. So I don't know if have you seen Lost Monster Files by chance?
Yeah, I've seen a few episodes of it. I haven't watched the entire show yet, but yes, I have seen a few episodes of it.
Okay, so in the caves in Arkansas, we were way underground, like super duper underground. And I'm not a caver. Like, I'm completely out of my element down there, right? It is kind of funny if you watch it, like I'm the only one from the from the gang wearing a helmet, but I'm like, I'm not hitting my head. Like, dude, doing fine. I'm like, dude, no, this isn't it. I do not go in caves. I do not go underground. Like, a nutty putty incident has me scared. Like, I don't want to die in a cave. Like, no. So we're down there and we're walking through and like kind of got the willies in this one passageway, and I'm feeling kind of weird. And I'm like, I'm just nervous. I'm just uneasy. And then we're in this other like chamber. And we're sitting around, and the camera guys are there, and the lighting guys there, and we're there, and we're trying to figure out where we're going next. And we got these like shitty maps, and we're like, all right. And the camera guys all go, whoa, what the fuck? All their batteries just drained. Like at once. And they're like, we got a hot swap batteries. I don't know. I thought I had 2 more hours on this. I don't. Like, we got a hot swap, take 5. So like we all just like sat and waited and shined our lights over on their little bags so they could like swap out the batteries. So like, all right, we're back. That was weird.
People watching out in the distance in the cave, like, what's down here?
Right. So I'm like, all right. So we keep going about our business, and we split up. And me and Troy went one direction, and Justin and Brittany went another direction. And we were going to like meet back up. And we were like dropping glow sticks along the way. So back. And we eventually meet back up, and it was like a day or two after, right after we did the cave, and we're sitting in a truck, and one of the other team members says, "Man, I got really freaked out in that one corridor of that cave." And I was like, "Was it the one walking into the chamber where the batteries all died?" And he was like, "Yes." He was like, "Did you feel that?" I was like, "I just thought I was feeling claustrophobic or something." He was like, "No." And then Brittany got like real serious and was like, "Yeah, well, we heard something in one of the other chambers that sounded like whistling. And there's no one else down. We are like a mile underground. Like, that was extremely freaky." And it was just like, maybe the caves are haunted. Maybe there's like energy in the minerals or something, like, I don't know, but it was really freaky.
Dude, that's one of those things that when you're down in those caves, like you start getting into the more scientific theories on the paranormal, like that would be the ideal place where you would start having strange phenomenon. And even beyond that, man, just like caves in general, who knows what's been existing down there. You start getting into these ancient culture theories on like what could potentially be down there. And I love diving into the cave stuff because I love getting into like the weird creature sightings that people seem to have down there. But yeah. I mean, that's exactly where my mind would go, is like, what physical thing is down here? You know, like,
well, like we found signs of life in the cave. I mean, obviously we found life in the cave. The one animal was, I'm guessing, dumped by a irresponsible pet. But we found other life in the cave. We found bats, we found crayfish, we found, things were, and we were deep. We found a crayfish that was clear. It had no pigment at all. It had no eyes. It had no pigment. It was actually like a endangered, isn't the right word, protected species. And we had to like vacate that part of the cave and be like, all right, great, we got the footage, moving on. And then like not go back to that part because we didn't want to like disturb the habitat. So there's definitely stuff down there. But yeah, it was freaky as hell. And that experience is what sort of woke me up to be like, okay, talking about the stuff that happened to me in this one apartment that I lived in.
Don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back with that deep conversation you crave. But just a quick reminder, if you might be interested in snagging some gear for this show, Bizarre Encounters, or any of your favorite creatures or topics, hop on over to the Open Minds Media merch store for a wide range of designs with new drops regularly, and t-shirts for the low price of $15.68 plus shipping. Check out the link to the store down in the show description. And now let's get back into it.
Where like the water faucet turned on by itself more than once, and I was like, at first I was like, oh, it's a water pressure thing. That's not these types of like faucets. So that's out. I had electrical phenomena with toys that have batteries like going off on their own in this apartment. If you're into the idea of ghosts, spirits, whatever, being like the disembodied soul of a person, like existing in a location that was important to them, the guy that built the house and owned the house had just died, like, not too long before I had moved into the apartment in the basement where I, was living and experiencing the phenomenon. His wife had passed away very recently, like within months of the phenomena. And I was just renting the basement. So yeah, and that's when I was like, okay, I guess I have had a paranormal experience. Like, it's that weird electrical phenomenon for me that set it off. So yeah, Joe.
It's one of those things that you don't actually acknowledge it until you have an experience that you can't really deny anymore. And then once you've had that experience, you end up looking back on things and you're like, all right, well, this seems weird. This seems weird, because it's stuff that you just explain away because it's, of course, what the rational mind would do. But once you start having like a basis of understanding some of this weird phenomenon, then it's like, all right, well, I'm experiencing this and I experienced the same thing back then. So it's like, what was that back then? I just tried to say, again, it was like, oh, water pressure. It was this, it was that. But, it's one of those things with, especially with the paranormal, it's like, you have to investigate any possible real world scenario of something like, old pipes, faulty electricity, all of that type of stuff. But once you get past that, it's like, you have some ground to know that you may have something that's unexplainable, especially if it happens continuously where there's no possible explanation for it. because it's like, the water, for example, if you have those hard turns, like you were saying, it's like, what other explanation could there be unless there's some, weird, creepy guy that's hopping in your window every night just to turn on your faucet just to mess with you. But I mean, that's a whole other problem all on its own.
Exactly. Yeah. So I forget what the original question was, but those are some stories that I'm passionate about. Personal experience. What was the second half of the question? I'm sorry.
Oh, diving into some of your favorite folklore that you dived into, because I always like to dive into some of the weird, obscure stuff that people have dived into to give it a new ground for life, so it doesn't end up being forgotten.
Yeah. So there's a lot in the Carolinas.
I've had, I think, 2 or 3 people on from Carolina, and I don't think anybody has ended up telling the same story. So I've seen a lot of it, and my co-host is from North Carolina, and he's always diving into weird stuff. So you guys got a plethora of high strangeness, from UFOs to cryptids to paranormal, a little bit of everything, man.
Yeah, it's kind of my bread and butter, so it's hard to pick a favorite one, but one that I looked into recently that I like, that I'll talk about, because I've never talked about it, actually. I haven't done an episode on it yet. I'm going to do the episode this fall.
Perfect.
Is Gravity Hill, because I feel like a lot of different towns have what are generally called a gravity hill, where if you park your car on a flat spot, it will appear to roll up a hill. You park your car, put it in neutral, and it rolls up a hill. And then, like, sometimes the folklore is, if you check the back of your car, there'll be handprints, right? Like, oh, and the ghosts of people that wrecked in that location are pushing your car forward. That's freaky, because it's the kind of thing that you can go experience. Now, physics, if you go out there with like a plumb bob and a like surveying equipment, surveyor's pole, and I forget what the other thing is called, but it's been a long time since I did surveying. You can actually find the grade, and there will be a slight the incline will be just right with the horizon line, illusion that it's uphill.
Creates an optical illusion.
Yeah, but it's really downhill. But like, I love that kind of folklore, because it's the kind of stuff you can physically go do as a young person, get the scare, feel the experience, and then when you start to dig into it, there might even have been an accident. Like, that part of the story might be true. And when you like take the time to go out there and look into the physical nature of the environment, you can come up with an explanation. But it's fun because it's got all the pieces, right? It has a good story. There might be history. It's got a phenomena that you can experience. I think that kind of stuff is great. So Gravity Hill is one of my favorite kinds of stories, I would say, folklore-wise. I know that's a very quick, like, nickel one, but it's a really good one. I've been sitting on it for
Reminds me of the idea about, in every cemetery there seems to be this statue of like an angel or something usually, and it has like the eyes that'll bleed or they'll drip at night.
Exactly.
And then you start looking into it and you realize that it's like moisture because of like the grass and everything like that, and it just ends up causing this like drip. Or sometimes, it'll be something that's like a crack or something that's in the statue that just happens to pop up in the right place. But it's one of those ones that I feel like every single town has a, this is the statue that bleeds, its eyes bleed at night, or its eyes cry at night, or something like that. Right. Like that's another one of those fascinating stories.
And they're great because there's usually some kind of history that you can tie to them, right? And they persist across locations. Like you said, it's like you can find the weeping statue or the haunted headstone in any state. And you can do the same thing with the Gravity Hill. Maybe not in the Midwest where it's like particular. Maybe not there. I don't know. But most times, like,
I think we still have a few in Michigan at least.
Okay,
but I guess we're a little bit more hilly for the Midwest. We barely make it as Midwest, according to most people.
I don't want to assume that every state has a Gravity Hill, but I feel like most do if you just look a little bit. But yeah, I think those kinds of experiences, that kind of folklore, the kind that creates an experience that you can share with your friends, is the most fun.
Say in those ones, like you kind of mentioned, they usually end up connecting to some point of something that happened there that's still a moment of interest. You know, be it with those roads that it's usually some type of accident and everything kind of transpires from there, or you know, even like the woman on the side of the road, like the woman in the white dress that
Oh my
everybody talks about in every town. You know, there's always something to that where it has some type of basis of story, and then from that basis of story, you can kind of start getting into the entertaining part where it's like, you know, what actually happened versus what ended up becoming the usual idea that everybody kind of wraps into it. But, you know, with some of those stories, though, I guess you can kind of get into the whole like Tulpa aspect where it's like, you know, is it something that enough people are just saying in every single town because it's just something generic? Or is it one of those things that enough people from every state or every town puts enough thought into this area that they end up creating this like Tulpa effect with some of these places? And maybe that's why every town has, you know, the bleeding-eyed, tombstone, or you know, has the woman in white, or has the Gravity Hill story with the accident. Is it all has a basis somewhere.
Yeah, and I think spoiler alert, if you ever listen to Arcane Carolinas, I end almost every single ghost story with, or maybe it's a physical manifestation of collective consciousness. like I'll go through like all the reasonable explanations, all like the stone tape theory ideas and stuff like that. I'll be like, or maybe it's a tulpa. It's almost always my ending. So that's awesome that you brought that up. Yeah, man, that stuff's great. Shared experiences make for the best preservation. And the more we tell the stories, the more they'll get repeated. And yeah.
Inquiries of Our Reality will be right back after this brief commercial break, so stay tuned. And now back to the show. Dude, same with the witch house. That's another one to throw in there because I know that Timothy Renner recently wrote a book talking about all of these hermits and everything, and he came on the show and was talking about it. But, you know, that's a good spot to start with some of those stories because it seems like, you know, of course, with the men hermits, like I was kind of talking about with him, they end up becoming these characters where, you know, it's like the Leatherman or like this. But back in those days, it was a different view with like women and men in that situation. So if there was a woman that was doing the same thing as this guy, she ends up getting called a witch. You know, she's living off her property, she's doing this. So from those, you end up getting these like haunted house stories, or you start getting these like, oh, she was kidnapping the children, she was doing this. But, you know, you end up digging into like the root of that, and you end up diving into some fascinating history about, you know, just a hermit person who had this traumatic life or something happened to him. And, you know, they got to this point where they just wanted to live away from everybody and they just made it work for themselves. And double entendre with that, they just want to be left alone. And the kids end up creating this whole folklore around them where they end up giving them that space without even realizing it. So it's kind of like two birds, one stone. But unfortunately, you know, those people's legacies end up getting, you know, pushed into, oh, it was a witch. They get pushed into the paranormal when, you know, it's just an honest lady that just wanted to be left alone that had her own fascinating story, but may not be as woo-woo as you wanted it to be.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. There's one that actually, I won't go into it because I'll butcher it. But yes, there is one name called Witch Ann. Like first name Witch, last name Ann. In North Carolina, that there's people that to this day, and this story goes back decades and decades and decades. To this day, they'll swear that this like one holler is haunted and not to mess with her. Like even in the modern era, and I'm like, wow, that lady's been dead for decades, and people are still afraid to go up there.
It's kind of funny. They'll end up tearing down all these old houses, but for whatever reason, there's something where like they leave those houses alone. But that shows how far back some of this folklore could possibly go, where, you know, these people that are now like the comptrollers of the town and stuff, you know, they grew up in this town. They're now like, yeah, that was the witch house when I was a kid. So we're just going to leave that alone. Like, it's kind of funny how you start looking into things and you realize that like folklore does play a bigger part in a lot more things than you realize. Like even, you know, every single like skyscraper not having a 13th floor. Like we're living in 2025 and we still don't do 13th floors on things. Like folklore exists all around us without people, you know, really realizing it, or half the time even wondering why. You know, like how many people have just seen the floors go from 12 to 14 and never question why there's no 13, or even just little subtle things within movies like 1408 is supposed to be the 13th floor, you know, in the movie, and it's just, you know, skips past it. But again, if people don't get that reference, then you kind of don't get little things.
It's great, man. I don't mean to I'm looking at the clock, and I just wanted to say I got a couple of minutes, and then I got to drop. But I'd love to keep talking. Is there, in these last couple of minutes, is there anything that you wanted to talk about in particular?
Let's see. I always love diving into some of the cryptid stuff. So I guess if you want, whether you have like a cryptid experience that you might want to share, or if you have a possible favorite cryptid that you've dived into from the Carolinas, like I'd love to, spend the last few minutes diving into a cryptid a little bit. So we touch base on a little bit of everything.
Yeah. Okay. So cryptids, I absolutely adore aquatic cryptids because I sincerely believe that the ocean is a wonderful and terrifying place, and that if there are undiscovered monsters, you hate to call them monsters if we're just talking about an animal, but undiscovered species. I mean, just last year, they found some like crazy number, like 5 or 6, like previously undiscovered fish, like that look like freaking aliens. I think aquatic cryptids are really where it's at, and specifically, off of the North Carolina Outer Banks, there's a lot of really credible sea monster sightings. And I use the term sea monster because they've turned up in shipping logs as description sea monster. Because the crew is like, I don't know what that is. It has to go in the log. Call it a sea monster. Like
it looks like a monster. It's in the sea, so call it as I see it.
Exactly. Like the SS, the Tresco, the Tresco encounter is one that was a big deal. The SS Santa Clara, or is a shipping boat. In the same area off the Outer Banks, both saw within a couple of decades of each other, like some like monstrosity of a sea serpent looking thing. And it's just really fascinating. And you want to talk about how folklore and the legends persist and imprint on other pieces of culture. There was a show that came out in the early 2000s. It didn't do very well, but it was produced by the same people that produced the Blair Witch Project. So it was like, they tried to make it seem like, is it real? Is it not? And they created a sea monster, the Wilmington sea monster, pretty nearby, like geographically, to where this would have been seen. Like it's feasible that something would have swam down and up into the port of Wilmington. And so they basically borrowed all these facts and then put it into a TV show on the website for the TV show. So, like, yeah, I don't know, man. Aquatic cryptids, that personal encounters, it's weird to have, like, dropped a microphone off a boat, chummed the waters, and then heard things that I don't know what they are. I'm not a marine biologist. I couldn't tell you what it was, but there was something there. It was on the boat. It was big, made a noise. That was in Alaska.
Who knows what's up there in those waters, man?
Exactly.
Like, that's
so
one of the last great mysteries of the world is the ocean, because
Right.
we have so much of it that we can't discover or even go near. Like, and even if we did create equipment that could go down there, these things are big and they know how to navigate. They can just stay away from it, so we'd never even catch up with it in the first place.
Right. That's the whole thing. Like, I am, my background in natural resource science is pretty much environmental science. Right? So it's like great, but I'm not a biologist. Like, play me a noise, I'm going to be like, hey, animal expert, what is that? I mean, they're like, I don't know. I'm going to be like, we don't know.
I'm with what he said. He's the expert.
Right, like, I can tell you if the habitat can support life and is suitable for something this large. That's what I can tell you. Like that, and I can tell you how to work the technology. That's what I can tell you, but I cannot tell you what that animal is. So that was pretty freaky.
Hey, that's why you have a team.
Right.
You got to have a little bit of everything all at once, because nobody can be just the master of all things all at once. You got to have an expert in a little bit of everything.
Right. But yeah, so I would say aquatic cryptids in general. There's my personal experience along with some favorite stories that I think are really feasible.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back. But if you don't like hearing the ads, then I have a solution for you. You can get ad-free and early access to this show and Bizarre Encounters with Shayn Orin on the Open Minds Media Patreon for just $2 a month. That's less than a bag of chips, and it's a great way to support the show and all the hard work behind it. And if you're interested in bonus content, merch store discounts, premium video versions of the show, along with some other perks, then you guys can become a member of the OMM family today, or you guys can give it a try with a 7-day free trial. The link for that is available down in the show notes. Now let's get back into it. So I guess since you said that you have to cut out soon, and hopefully at some point we can do a round 2, because I definitely enjoyed this conversation, and I'd love to be able to dive in with a little bit more time and get into some other weird stuff with you. But, it's always good to have an introduction episode to kind of get a feel for each other so we know where to hop in on next time, of course.
Totally.
Before I let you go, I always like to end the show with some words of wisdom. So if there's any words of wisdom you might want to bestow on the listeners, be it to other people looking for adventure or other people researching stuff or whoever you want to direct it towards, what might those words of wisdom be?
You're brushing your teeth. Be sure to turn the water off until you need it to rinse the brush.
Save that water.
Right.
Otherwise, there's not going to be enough water for the aquatic cryptids.
Awesome.
And last thing before I let you go, man, if anybody wanted to come and check out your podcast, want to come and check out your books, the show you're even on, or any of the work that you're doing, where can people come and find you across the internet, man?
Sure. So ArcaneCarolinas.com. That's Arcane, ARCANE, Carolinas, CAROLINAS.com. From there, you can get links to the podcast, you can get links to buy the books. If you're in the Carolinas, there's a decent chance that the books are already in your public library. You can check them out there for free. Catch me at the Grafton Monster Festival in West Virginia. Catch me at the Loveland Frogman Festival in Ohio. Check out Lost Monster Files. I think it's on Animal Planet in June. It's rotated networks. It started on Discovery, went to Travel, and I think they're putting it on Animal Planet this summer. It's always on Max. So if you have Max, you can HBO Max, whatever they're calling it this week. You can also watch it there. That's pretty much
So I'll have to look around for it and see if I can find it, because I've seen a handful of episodes, but that's usually the problem with a lot of these shows is that they get bounced around. So it's like you're never able to find them when you want to find them. So I'll end up finding it and be able to finish the rest of the show at some point here soon, hopefully.
There you go. Yeah, now you have some background info for that cave thing, man. Because that's something that, like, again, we didn't really even talk about the experience until after everything was done. Just kind of like, hey, did you feel weird? Yeah, I felt weird. That was weird. Yeah. Well,
hey, that's how you know that there was actually something to it, is because you guys didn't try to. It wasn't the main focus on the show. Like, that's always the weirdest stuff, is when you come back to it later and you're just like, all right, well,
right.
Where do I put this? How do I categorize this?
Exactly. But I appreciate you having me on. I'm really glad again that, like, I credit the algorithm for connecting us. And yeah, thanks for your patience on scheduling, and this has been awesome, man.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you taking the time to come on today, and I'm really looking forward to next time we get to chat.
Absolutely.
If you enjoyed today's conversation and want to show some love, I'd definitely appreciate it if you guys left a review or rating for the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any podcatcher you happen to use. Your continued support is what makes the show possible, and your opinions go a long way to help the show grow and improve. And if you know anyone who would enjoy today's episode, share it with a friend. Grassroots support from listeners like you guys is exactly how this show grows, so thank you. And if anyone would like to get in touch with me for any reason whatsoever, you guys can do so through email, which is inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com, or through social media. Instagram and Facebook are the ones that I'm the most active on, but you guys can also get a hold of me through the Discord server, or you guys can also get a hold of me through the submission form, which is up at the top of the link tree. And the last way you guys can get a hold of me is through the hotline. You guys can text or call that, whatever happens to be easier for you guys, and that number is 313-364-1551. And if you guys didn't catch that, it is available down in the show notes. And if you guys got some free time, don't forget to go and check out our awesome friends with affiliate links, Dimension Devices, Oregon-ite, and Mule, with some additional discounts and credits available. More information on that is, of course, available down in the show notes. And every single thing that I mentioned throughout the show is all available in the link tree, which is also available down in those show notes. And with that, hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. Hope today's show has connected some dots in your own reality. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Have a good night, everybody.
Reality isn't what it seems. Abductees taking aboard a craft with a tractor beam. Is life a simulation or an astral dream? Aliens travel through black holes in different galaxies. Life is a bizarre odyssey, with the mic talking about philosophy. Well, Bigfoot is stalking campers as the Wendigo walks through the woods of sharpened antlers, using a Ouija board to talk to the dead like a necromancer. There's so many questions and not enough answers. So if you're interested, and mysteries and abnormalities. Tune in and listen to inquiries of our reality. So if you're interested in mysteries and